Say good morning to everybody, and glad to be here with each one of you. And just want to open this up by saying thank you for the new day. Thank you for what will be shared here, the words that will be spoken. Thank you for the listening. And again, here, Great Spirit, we thank you for our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our emotional well-being, our physical well-being. Thank you for the sacred elements that are present within our bodies, this holy water, the breath of life, this fire that's in our electrical system, in our heart, in our belly, and again, the holy earth that's in the minerals that are in our bones. Thank you too for this time that we're in, this very time that's going to be, we're going to be able to see some beautiful celestial things in the heavens, and we will be able to receive a good blessing from those celestial events that are occurring right now, are going to be occurring in the next couple days, this equinox, or this, not equinox, but the event that's happening with the sun and the moon. And I'm grateful for that, because I know it's going to bring some great change for each one of us, and a time of reflection. And also the season that we're in too, I'm very grateful for this time where the sap is descending in the northern hemisphere, and where the sap is rising in the southern hemisphere, and a balance is being made. And in that way here, Great Spirit, I ask that you bless each one of us with balance, and in that way that we could be blessed, and in that way it could be sacred. Aho, all my relations.
Thank you, Ramona, for that invocation. It's always good to consecrate our time together as a Chartres community to the ancestors. I think you were referring to the lunar eclipse that is coming up in a couple of weeks on the 28th of October, a partial lunar eclipse. The celestial beings and intelligences are always swirling around us. And whether it's the planets or the moon or the sun or the far-reaching stars, the constant movement of our cosmos is intimate inside us, influencing movements of emotion, workings of the mind, attitudes and behavior with such subtlety that we do the will of the mystery without even knowing the mysterious. So it's in that spirit I'd like to welcome all of you today to our October Chartres Community Call, which we have been convening every month since 2005. So we're going into our 18th year of continual preparation for our annual pilgrimage each and every year. That has taken us to the sacred site of Chartres, to the heart of the telluric energies emanating out of Mother Earth that humans experience as the sacred feminine, and have done so for thousands of years in and around the sacred hill of Chartres. And as you all know, because of the Olympics taking place next year, we have chosen not to make pilgrimage to France. The Olympics are going to be right in the middle of the summer, right in the middle of July. So whether we picked, July, or we picked August, where we normally go, the Olympic we're going to be there not only in Paris, but also in Chartres. So instead, we've chosen to go to Teotihuacán and the pyramids of the sun and the moon, and a site that's every bit as ancient as Chartres, every bit as ancient as the great pyramids of Giza, one of the primary nodes, according to the ancients, whereby the planet communed and interconnected with celestial beings. And we've been working hard to get our website up. It's going live now. Georg is going to put the link in the chat, so you'll be the first people here on the community call to have access to a beautiful web page that our team and the Chartres team have been working on. So we want to make that available to everyone. We'll be talking a lot more about that. But as we enter the program today, I just want to note some of the multifarious aspects of our world, because one makes pilgrimage in the spirit of questing for the holy, but sometimes within the context of that which is not holy. And as you all have observed in the news, starting yesterday morning early, when Hamas, on behalf of the Palestinian people, attacked Israel with an effectiveness and a ferociousness that I would say is akin to what the United States experienced on 9/11, when out of the blue, Al-Qaeda attacked the World Trade Towers and the Pentagon and shocked the United States and the world, as Hamas shocked Israel and the world yesterday with an incontrovertible show of force on behalf of the oppressed Palestinian people. And we're witnessing in the news how that is playing out as we gather today. It's also worth noting that just last Thursday, the Nobel Peace Prize Committee awarded Narges Mohammadi the Nobel Peace Prize, an Iranian woman who is serving a very long prison sentence for supporting women, life, and freedom in Iran, another area where there's been an extraordinarily oppressive regime. And yet the flower of revolution, in this case carried by young women after the death in September of 2022 of Mahsa Amini, really sparked an upsurge of rebellion and revolution. So the world is in tumult, and the world is not in a place where the center any longer holds. I happen to be in Washington, D.C., as you know, and also last week, the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, for the first time in all of U.S. history, was removed forcibly by members of his own party that threw the entire U.S. Congress into consternation and uncertainty. And at the same time, as most of you know, I'm here in Washington, within blocks of the White House and the Capitol building, working on some other aspect of this multifarious world in which we find ourselves. The fact that the United States government is beginning the process now of releasing into the public domain incontrovertible evidence that we are not alone, that extraterrestrial intelligences exist. They've been on planet Earth for some time. There's been contact, and there's evidence to demonstrate that that contact has been made. And the office that I'm heading up is part of the congressional legislation. And so I'll be working with the powers that be and also the larger institutions around the world, including the world religious bodies, on this momentous moment in human history. So the world in which we find ourselves, everyone, is exploding. And things are getting worse and worse, better and better, faster and faster all the time. So for us to come together, as we do, month by month, consecrated in the memory of the ancestors, dedicated to the pursuit of the holy, committed to developing a community that honor each other, that honors the feminine, is, under the circumstances, one of the most important things that we can do, both personally and collectively. So it's in that spirit that I want to welcome all of you to our community call. We're going to be hearing a lot more about Teo in the course of this next hour. And I would like to welcome now the co-director of the Chartres Academy, Banafsheh Sayad, who was very instrumental in developing the website with HeatherAsh Amara and Katie Amran and others on the staff. So Banafsheh, thank you for all that you do, and welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone. Good to be here with you. I want to thank Ramona for a beautiful invocation, and Chloe Goodchild for the beautiful piece of music that we opened the session with. You know, Jim, as I was listening to you, I was reminded of a beautiful poem by Ibn Arabi where he talks about, "My heart has become a garden amidst the flames." I feel like our Chartres community, the way we really commune with one another and share our great interest in the divine feminine and really living the sacred and remembering all that is beautiful, good, and true in our world together, is like a garden amidst the flames. And one of the gardeners, one of our special gardeners, is HeatherAsh Amara. It's my great pleasure to introduce her today. Most of you, of course, know her. HeatherAsh Amara is a wonderful author. She's a best-selling author of the Warrior Goddess Warrior Goddess Training, the 7 Secrets of Happy and Healthy Relationships, and an upcoming book, Wild, Willing, and Wise. I congratulate you, HeatherAsh, for completing your manuscript. I know how hard it is to write a book. HeatherAsh will be our ceremonial guide to Teotihuacán. She has been taking groups there for over 20 years. So we're in very good hands. HeatherAsh has been the director of ritual for the past 2 years in Chartres with us. And we're so blessed to have her with us. HeatherAsh, please tell us what is in store for us in June of next year.
Thank you, Banafsheh. Thank you, Jim and Ramona. I'm so delighted to be able to share Teotihuacán with all of you. And when we travel to Chartres, one of the main draws is around the energy of the place and the deep, deep connection to the divine feminine. And Teotihuacán is actually the same. There is many, many ley lines that come through this ancient city that was started being built 400 AD and was completed around, 400 BC and was completed around 300 AD. And for many years, there was a mystery around who built Teotihuacán. And that mystery is starting to be answered in some really wonderful ways. So I'm going to share some things today that not a lot of people know about Teotihuacan and what's happening with the divine feminine there, how the divine feminine is very literally rising and coming to the surface after being buried for thousands and thousands of years. I was blessed to first go to Teotihuacan in 1992. And my connection to that place was I was in a goddess community, I was teaching, and I felt like I'd come to the end of my journey with this particular community. I felt like something was missing in my life. And I did a prayer at that time. And I said, I don't know what I need or what I'm missing on my spiritual journey and on my path right now, but please bring someone into my life that will help me take the next step, that will help guide me forward. And about a week later, I had a dream. And in that dream, a man showed up and stood in front of me and smiled. And I knew that was the person that was going to take me to the next place of my development, of my initiation in relationship with the divine. And I remember waking up and thinking, right, where am I going to find this man? I live in a tiny town in Northern California, and I was like, there's no way. And a week later, somebody came into my office and said, oh my God, you have to meet this man. And my whole body knew without a doubt that that was the person in my dreams. That man was Don Miguel Ruiz, who's the author of the 4 Agreements and a Toltec master in the Eagle Knight lineage, which is based out of Teotihuacan. And it took me a year to get ready because it was one of those moments where I knew my life was about to change completely. And starting in 1992, I apprenticed with Miguel very deeply with a group of about 40 people that traveled with him everywhere, all over the world. And our main home was Teotihuacan. And the word Teotihuacan means where humans become divine. It was a university. It was a place where, and it still is, people come from all over the world to learn about different levels of consciousness, to deepen into their spiritual path. And it's a place of initiation. It has always been that, and it continues to be that to this day. So for many years, I traveled with Miguel, sometimes 4 times a year to Teotihuacan, doing ceremony and ritual and opening my heart really as I learned about the history, the land, the power of the pyramids, and the invisible realm that is woven throughout Teotihuacan. I always say about all sacred places around the world that there are particular places that have a very high frequency of energy and that many, many people are drawn to, both tourists as well as spiritual seekers. And Teotihuacan is definitely one of those places. And that I always say that there's the one level of the tourist, of people visiting and taking the energy in. And then there's another underground river of energy that when you have a guide that knows how to take you beyond the surface and into the depths, tremendous change and transformation can happen. Teotihuacan has been a holy site for many different cultures, and that underground river is continual since that place was founded. And there is so much just beauty there. And one of the things that I love about my connection to Teotihuacan, I've been going there 2 to 4 times a year since 1994. And every time I go, something new emerges in my being. There's some big transformation or change or insight. There's a deepening that happens. And that is what happens when we're in relationship with places that are alive and we have guides that know how to take us into those inner realms. So one of the things that we'll be sharing this journey to Teotihuacan is a connection to the divine feminine and how that links also to places like Chartres and different places around the world that have that connection to the divine feminine. And this is a wonderful story that is unfolding still, that not a lot of people know about, that we'll get to really go into the heart with. So about 15, 20 years ago, there was a huge rainstorm in Teotihuacán. And during that rainstorm, a crack opened in front of one of the pyramids. And it's the smallest pyramid. It's called the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl. So the pyramid, the largest pyramid is a pyramid of the sun. Then there's a pyramid of the moon along what's called the Avenue of the Dead. And why it's called the Avenue of the Dead is that in order to walk down that avenue, you have to be willing to let go of attachment, of who you think you are, and really embrace the angel of death. And that in the Toltec world is one of our biggest guides and allies to help us to fully live. And for those of you that might be new to the Toltec world, the Toltecs were a group of people that came together in South and Central Mexico to study perception. They were incredible energy workers and seers, and they considered themselves both artists and scientists equally. They didn't see a difference between art and science. And they were the creators of Teotihuacán and the city and the complex. And that lineage was passed down through the generations until the Spanish invaded Mexico. And during that time, the Toltec world went underground. So it had gone into different traditions, and the wisdom was being passed on. And when the Spanish invaded Mexico, there was an agreement that was made with all of the priests and priestesses of that time that they decided they wanted to preserve the wisdom. They did not want the Spanish to get the wisdom and the information that they had gathered. And so they made the decision to go underground. The contract they made with each other was that they would not teach groups any longer, that they would only take one-on-one apprentices, and that they would basically disappear and merge into the people so that the wisdom could stay safe. And that's exactly what happened. And so the wisdom then went into different families and different people that scattered around the world. And Miguel's lineage, which is called the Eagle Knight lineage, is just one branch of different Toltec teachings. There's a big similarity in the teachings around deep perception, clarity, deepening into stillness, learning to perceive from an energetic point of view. There's a lot with the teachings that we can talk more about, but I just want to share how that lineage then went through Miguel's family, was passed very carefully on through the family to Mother Sarita, who was Don Miguel's mother. And Mother Sarita was the first one to go public with the teachings again. She taught in San Diego. She's an incredible curandera down in San Diego. And she prophesied that her youngest son, Don Miguel, would take the teachings into the public in a really big way. Miguel was on his trajectory to become a doctor, a medical doctor, when he had an accident in his car, where his car was driving a little Beetle, Volkswagen Bug, and it slammed into a wall. And his memory was of right before the car hit, pulling 3 of his friends to safety, and the car smashing. And when he came to, he realized, 1, that was not possible, and 2, he was too limited in his work of wanting to be a doctor. So he went and studied with Mother Sarita and became the healer and the teacher that he still is today. And he dedicated himself to bringing the teachings out in a huge way into the world. And that was when he also started taking groups down to Teotihuacán again and finding the story and the history and the energetic and opening that sacred space up again for travelers and seekers. So a little bit of history there. So when this crack opened in Teotihuacán, it was in front of the smallest pyramid. And that pyramid is the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl, which is the feathered serpent, which is a very, very important symbol in Mexico. If you see the national symbol of Mexico is the snake, which is about the connection to the earth, and the eagle, which is the connection to the sky. So Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent, brings together sky and earth. And that's really what Teotihuacán is about. It's about bringing the divine into form. And that form has been unfolding, we can say. And I really feel like what has been unfolding is, as humans have been ready and as it's been needed, the wisdom has been coming back. There's been prophecy for thousands of years that the Toltec wisdom, when it went underground, would come back up again in what's called the sixth sun. And that has happened, that the Toltec teachings have come through many different facets. The first one was Carlos Castaneda with his work with Don Juan. And that work, incredible teachings. The most well-known is the Journey to Ixtlan. That was the first place where the Toltec teaching started bubbling up into the world again. And then there's many teachers now, Don Miguel, Victor Sanchez, Theon Morris in South Africa, Marilyn Tanashenda, Taisha Abelar. So there's many different branches of the Toltec wisdom. And I'm really grateful to be in the lineage and part of the Ruiz family, bringing these teachings back to the world. So much to share. Okay, so this crack opens in front of Quetzalcoatl, and an archaeologist, Sergio, heard about it and was called in, and he literally, they tied a rope around his waist and they lowered him 30 feet down into this crack that had opened. And he said that as he was being lowered down, he was terrified. It's pitch black. He doesn't know when he's going to land. And he hits ground and he looks around and there's nothing. There's just a wall. And he looks up and he sees this tiny little crack. And he says, okay, this is something. So they ended up building little robots to go in to find out, that took photographs to find out what was there. And what they realized is that it was indeed a tunnel towards Quetzalcoatl that no one had discovered before. And as they started excavating, they were really excited because what they thought in their heads is, we're now going to know who created Teotihuacán. We're going to know this is going to be the king's tomb. So they were thinking about Egypt and the burials of the pharaohs and the kings. So they got really excited. And as they were unearthing the tunnel, what they found were there were multiple walls with offerings in between. So imagine a huge, thick wall that was then filled, a room that was then filled with offerings. They found over 100,000 offerings through these different rooms as they excavated, including wood, flowers that were preserved, like all sorts of things. And in one of the rooms, there were shells, these conch shells that are only from the coast, that were carved with all the different types of tribes. So Zapotec, Olmec, the Aztec, so the Mayans, so all of them were together. And that again confirmed that Teotihuacán is a place where people came from different traditions to study, that it was a university that drew many, many different cultures and peoples. So as they unearthed, they came to a tunnel that went under the pyramid that was covered in hematite, magnetite, and pyrite. So you can imagine if you brought a torch that it would glisten. And as they traveled in, they got to the center of there's a big cave under the pyramid, and there was nothing there. It was a huge, empty cavern, except there was something there. So as they got down into the cavern, they realized that there were 4 statues in the very, very center of this cavern. And that those 4 statues were all cantilevered back very carefully. They were all leaning back and they were all looking at one point in the cavern. And that point is exactly in the center of the pyramid of Quetzalcoatl. It's what's called the axis mundi. It's the axis of the underworld to the middle world to the upper world. And those 4 statues were all shamans. They each had backpacks that they were carrying that had disintegrated, but they were able to recreate them. They had hemp backpacks that had scrying mirrors and shamanic tools. 3 of those figures were female, and they were in full regalia. They're about that tall, carved out of serpentine. And 1 figure was male and was not dressed. So what the thinking is that these 3 women were the priestesses and the founders of Teotihuacán, and that probably the male was an apprentice and was working with the 3 elders. So what arose out of the darkness was the divine feminine in triplicate. And it's really powerful because those 3 deities or goddesses or shamanic practitioners were buried for so long, and this is the first time that they've been discovered, and that one of them is still held in the tunnel. So one of the blessings for me is that I've been a part of a family in Teotihuacán for 20 years now, the Hernandez family, and they have connections with all of the many peoples around Teotihuacán, including Sergio, the archaeologist, and my dear friend Emily, who is from the United States, but who married into the family, is an incredible artist that works down there. Alberto, another indigenous artist that works there and has deep connection with the pyramids. And we're also going to be working with them, with Emily and with Alberto and with the Hernandez family, as well as direct connection with Sergio. So we'll be able to go under the pyramid and sit with the energy there. We'll be able to do deep ceremony, a deep initiation ceremony through the pyramids every day. And we'll also have other speakers working with the arithmetic, because that's our theme for this month, is arithmetica, is also the math and the energy and the geology and geography all coming together of why Teotihuacán is such an important site in the world, and how genius the Toltec were and are in their perception and in their creation. So let me think if there's anything else I want to share before I pass it back to Jim, and we'll open it up for questions. One of the other things that I want to share is that sometimes when people think about Mexico, there's a lot of news about how Mexico is not safe. And sometimes people will call, when we do journeys, we'll call us and we'll say, is it safe? Is it okay? And we stay in an incredibly beautiful retreat center. It's very, very safe. When you land in Mexico City, there's transport. We'll pick you up. We'll bring you straight to the pyramids. The pyramids are about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Mexico City. And then we are in this beautiful family compound called the Dreaming House. And it's called the Dreaming House because Teotihuacán is really about learning how to dream in a new way. The Toltecs consider that we're always dreaming. So it's not just about nighttime dreaming, it's about learning how to capture our attention so that we can dream the life we want to create. And I think it's even more important for us now as the world is fracturing more and more, as there's more challenges coming up in all of our lives and in the planet with all of the things that we're navigating, for us to have a place where we can go back, where there is deep ceremony that's been happening over and over again, where there is wisdom and information, where there's guidance for us from the ancestors, from the spirit world, from the invisible, from the land, where there's a deep river of knowing. And that when we come together in a place like Teotihuacán, that there isn't an accident who gets pulled there. The group is always really powerful, and there's always incredible depth that happens in the group through the teachings and through the community and just being on that land. So Teotihuacán, the actual, like the city now that is fenced in, that's just a tiny, tiny portion of Teotihuacán. The Dreaming House is actually on the land of that city. Alberto's been doing a lot of excavation. He actually built a little pyramid at the end. There's a labyrinth, and then there's a pyramid at the end of the property. And when they were excavating, they found a mica floor, and like anytime you dig, there is things that come up out of the earth. So we'll be on the site there. And the intent for next year for our journey is to keep our connection to Chartres and deepen it in another place in relationship to the divine feminine, in relationship to opening our hearts and getting more resourced so that we can go back into our lives and into the world with grounded energy and presence. And the Toltec teachings are really designed to help us get free on the inside so that we can stay connected and be in alignment with our intuition, with our guidance, with the mystery in a very deep way. So we'll open up for questions, and the Dreaming House is the name of the place where we'll be staying.
Thank you so much, HeatherAsh. This sounds so exciting. I myself have never been there, so I'm really looking forward. And thank you so much for sharing the new findings, this emergence of the divine feminine trinity, and how you were saying that Teotihuacán is about where humans become divine, that it has been a university. That's very fascinating. I wanted to ask you also to tell us about what we will be doing for the summer solstice, because everyone, we're going to be there for the solstice, and we're going to do some special ceremony for that. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. Yes, and every day we will be doing our beautiful dance with Bonafé, and there'll be different speakers, and it'll be very interactive. And then for the solstice, we will be doing a optional, everybody can join us, fire ceremony and fire walk. I've been doing fire walking for 30 years before I met Miguel, actually, and it's been a really big part of my path because it is a really deep connection with an element, the element of transformation. And one of the first things that we learn is that fire burns. It's one of the first things our parents teach us, like, don't touch fire, hot. So when you witness somebody walking across 1300-degree coals, which is about what fire burns at, even if you don't walk, just witnessing somebody walk on fire, that agreement explodes, like it just shatters. And what happens is there's a deep knowing in your body that every agreement you've made since then is suspect, that you can then free yourself. It's an incredible ceremony. It's one of the oldest ceremonies on the planet, actually, fire walking. As long as we've been in relationship to fire, we've been walking on it, and it's done by peoples all over the world. So that will be our celebration for the solstice, is a fire walk.
Well, thank you, HeatherAsh. And just some questions in the chat about the name of the house. Is the Dreaming House is where we're staying?
Yeah, exactly. The Dreaming House.
Right. Okay.
Casa
good.
de los Sueños.
And you'll see the logistics in relationship to the event in the link that we just put up. So you should be able to find all the information you need when you register and so forth and so on. But I'm glad you just came back on, Ramona, because I would love to have you comment on what HeatherAsh just laid out about the extraordinary spiritual technology of perception that emanated from Central America, Mexico, southwest part of the United States. It's a really unique aspect of human spirituality.
I also went to Teotihuacán in 1992 with a Peace and Dignity Journeys, and we were given permission to stay at the foot of the pyramid of Quetzalcoatl, and we had a big ceremony. We had been running at that point from the tip of Alaska and the tip of South America, and then we joined at Teotihuacán. That was to talk about some of this ancestral knowledge that Heather was talking about. So there's been a lot of beautiful work to bring about this in a spiritual way that I know of from the southern part of the hemisphere and the northern part of the hemisphere, to uplift some of these teachings that are from the divine feminine. And it's been an edict from the elders since 1990, since my dad went to an encounter in Quito, Ecuador, and that was the edict, was that we need to bring out the teachings that were hid when the Spaniards came, and that this is the time. And so Peace and Dignity's Journeys is a run that happens every 4 years from South America and North America, and they pick a central location. We were 3 years in Teotihuacan. So it is a very magical place. And I'm like so sad I can't be there, because I'm going to Peace and Dignity in South America, because it's going to start at about the same time as the ceremony in Teotihuacan. And I'm trying to figure it out now that Heather's saying we can go in the pyramid. How can I rearrange my time, or how can I, anyway, but yes, it is the time now, and it has been the time for all of these ancestral knowledges to come out and to not be held back. And that was the other part that the elders said in 1990, and that was this meeting of elders from the whole continent, the North and the South, and they were saying, we don't have time for division anymore. We need to really remember that we're all human beings on this planet, and that she has been caring for us. And now it's our turn to take a look at what we've done and start caring for this earth, and we have to care for one another to do that. And so we can't have divisions of color. So yeah, I think, what Heather's doing and what's going to happen there is going to be so amazing. I'm just really sad I can't be there. Or maybe I will. We'll figure it out. I don't know.
Maybe you can buy locate.
Yeah.
I know people like you do those things. I want to bring in what Elaine Freund just put in the chat. HeatherAsh and Ramona Bonavche, welcome as well, about her concern that these massive pyramids were built with slave labor and workers that were, fed on, a loaf of barley bread and water a day. That's, if I could just begin the discussion, Elaine, that's the prevailing narrative of a patriarchal civilization such as ours that doesn't really understand the intricacies of the spirit. The reality is, whether it's the Pyramid of Giza or Teotihuacan, or let's take Baalbek in Lebanon, where they have stones that are 2,000 tons in scope. The pyramid in Giza, the average stone is, I think, 2 or 3 tons. It's not physically possible, even with 100,000 slaves, to move those kinds of stones around with the intricacy of, say, you find at Machu Picchu, which is a similar phenomenon. The ancients had access to a technology that has been lost, that used sonar, sound, and they were able to create these massive monumental structures. You can also think of Stonehenge. Stonehenge. All the stones at Stonehenge are massive stones. And we like to think of, you know, a bunch of, you know, thousands of people pulling these ropes over these little pulleys and dragging them up and then pushing them up. That's not the way it happened. It happened in a much more sacred way, through the sophistication of the spirit. And when you read the chronicles of Carlos Castaneda alone about what the sorcerers were capable of doing, you know, moving 20,000-ton stones was the least of what they were able to do, because they understood the mysteries of being. And that's what we're discovering with these unidentified anomalous phenomena that I'm now working on. They're capable of going at speeds that stagger the imagination and stopping on a dime and turning right, going from 80,000 feet down into the ocean, traveling through the ocean at 300 to 400 miles an hour. So they have access to a technology that we can't even imagine. So I just would invite all of us, when we think of Teotihuacán, not to think of a bunch of slaves working on these things, but a couple of sorcerers with some tuning forks, moving some pretty massive blocks of stone around through the forces of anti-gravity, which apparently is what the extraterrestrials use to get to our Earth from other dimensions of the galaxy. But anyway, HeatherAsh, you know more about this than I do. Would love to have your comment, and then anything Ramona or Bonafshe want to add to this discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Great, yeah. Absolutely true. And that, this is what I always think about is that we don't know, just like Jim said, like, we don't know how these places were built and what the energy that was put into them in terms of like who built them. But what we do know is that the energy of the wisdom still comes through the stones, that it was very consciously created, and that it was created in such a way that the actual intent of the builders is still available to us thousands of years later. And let me see if I can put this into words. Everywhere we go, there is pain. Everywhere that we go, there is places where there's slavery, where indigenous peoples are killed, where there is trauma. And that one of the things that I've learned in Teotihuacán is to tune into, to understand, like to honor that in all the places there's challenge. I mean, what just happened in the Middle East, what's happening still in America with the indigenous peoples and the heartbreak. There's heartbreak everywhere. There's people treating each other terribly everywhere. And that when we go to a place like Teotihuacán, we deepen into not ignoring that, but opening to be with the harm that we do as humans, and then move through that, include it, and then move through it to open into the wisdom, the healing. How do we transform ourselves so that we're able to metabolize our own pain so that we don't put it onto other people's? How do we metabolize the pain that's in places so that we bring healing? So that is part of what is really woven into the work that I do, especially, is learning how to transmute energy. It's exactly what Ramona was talking about with the delegation that she works with. That's what they're doing, is they're literally putting their bodies in places to transmute energy. And that transmutation is not about pretending that hard things didn't happen, but of honoring the ancestors and the harm that happened and transmuting it so that we use the energy in a new way.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
That's really great. One thing that we were told when we started running is that in our bodies, I said this in the invocation, in our bodies are these minerals And Heather said it when she was explaining about the ley lines of Teotihuacán, is that there is this magnetism that we can use, and it's going to help us run. And if we can, so to be a runner, and even in Teotihuacán, you know, the runners were very sacred, holy people, because they had to have a really good mind to remember things, to carry things correctly. They had to be diligent and that they're going to get there within a certain period of time. So, you know, in indigenous tradition, that's what they think. But they also said that a really good runner knew how to magnetize themselves so that they could run long distances. And they also said that that's how some of these things got built, is through the using, you know, magnetic energy to move big things. So yeah, I mean, and I think it's very true, you know, what Heather's saying is that we do have this opportunity to transmute the pain that's going on in the world right now. I mean, at this very instant, we have an obligation to do that. Actually, it's an obligation as a uplifted light person, light being, you know. Yeah, but okay, I'm gonna be quiet.
Mon-Fri, anything you want to add? You come from a part of the world where ancient Persia had the same phenomenon of these massive monumental structures. No one knows who built them. No one really knows even how old they are. And yet they just sit there defying the imagination of the modern mind.
Exactly. But just to continue what HeatherAsh opened and Ramona just said, so this heavy lifting for us now is to transmute the pain of the past, the present, so that it's not taken into the future. And as Ramona said, you're calling it an obligation, and it is an obligation, but it's also something that can be joyous. You know, this kind of being the instrument of the transmutation. So the new heavy lifting for us is that, I feel. So when we go to a place like Teotihuacán, we can come into that frequency, into that resonance of our ancestors who literally lifted the stones with their energy, but we will be lifting the pain of the world. So that's what I feel. And just to say to Alain about Chartres and Christianity, and this has come up many times, and I'm just going to say it, even though we're not going there next year. We go to Chartres to remember what is more ancient, Alain. We don't go there to uphold necessarily Christianity. We respect it. We don't build walls against it. We bridge with our hearts, but we go there to remember something more ancient. So to just limit it to a more recent expression of what has happened there is unfortunate. It's limited. So I invite you to also look at Chartres in a way that is much bigger than the recent manifestation of what has been going on there.
Yeah. You know, I love the point that you're making, Mon-Fri. I think it's quite profound. If you think about it, everyone, you know, we think of the Pyramid of the Sun or the Pyramid of Giza or Baalbek or these other monumental structures. We think what the energy was to lift all that weight. And in our world today, as HeatherAsh said, you know, the weight that we're dealing with is the pain of the world. And we're challenged, even as the ancients were, not to, you know, move stones with slave labor, not to do what they're doing in the Middle East right now, is just killing each other and thereby perpetuating the pain and the trauma and the hatred and the hurt and the suffering and the grief. But to elevate our consciousness so that we can transmute the pain of the world, like the ancients were able to lift 20-ton stones, but through a vibrational frequency, as Ramona was saying, that allowed remember Archimedes. He says, if you give me the right trim tab, I can lift the entire world, right? And that's our challenge today, is either to do it through sort of slave consciousness or change and transmute the world through an elevation of consciousness. So the structures of challenge are essentially the same. So thank you, Mon-Fri. That was very artfully put. Thank you, and deepens our awareness of the challenge. Now, 2 quick points before we bring this to a close. One is Robert Schiffo was asking whether there's going to be a post-Teo pilgrimage, and I would say we're working on it. And HeatherAsh knows Machu Picchu about as well as she knows Teo, so that's a possibility. But of course, you have to fly all the way to Peru. There's a lot of sites in Mexico itself, in the Yucatan and other places that, defy belief when you really stand at the base of these huge monumental structures and consider that they were actually built by extraterrestrial intelligences, et cetera, et cetera. So we're working on it, and maybe over the next month or so, we'll have information on that. But the other thing I wanted to note is that because of the constraints of the dreaming house where we're going to be staying, in the rooms that we're going to be using, we're going to be limiting the pilgrims in Teo to 70. And if you think about last a couple months ago in Chartres, we had nearly 95, and the year before that with V and Andrew, we had over 100. So I think it's important for those of you who want to go to sign up early, make sure you have a place. We are also inviting the Ubiquity University alumni to join. So there's going to be a lot of people that are coming. HeatherAsh is promoting through her network as well. This is a real partnership between the Chartres Academy and HeatherAsh's Pyramid Academy. So it's deeply collaborative, and we'll be talking more about that. And just to conclude, and then Ramona, I'd love to have you say whatever you would like to say, then HeatherAsh, and then Mon-Fri to close us out. When we do these monthly calls in preparation for the next pilgrimage, so, in November and December and then next year through May, till we meet around the solstice in Teotihuacán, we're going to be in an act of preparation around Toltec spirituality and Toltec architecture, the notion of number, etc., and some of the shamanic aspects of Toltec spirituality as we prepare ourselves for our pilgrimage. Because when you take pilgrimage, you're entering sacred space. So the more deepening of the soul you can inculcate before you leave wherever it is that you are and transport yourself to that sacred place, the more you're going to get out of the experience. Remember, this is what Plato said. He said, when you go to the mysteries, you can't expect the mysteries to give you something. You get out of that exactly what you put in. So you actually create your own mystical experience through the grace of a sacred site by your own willingness to go deep. So that's where we are for October, and we're going to deepen all this in November until we go to Mexico next June. But Ramona, any closing comments you would like to make?
I just want to say, I think that this is HeatherAsh has been doing this work for a really long time. So, and then the fact that she's going to have the lineage of the people that are that have shared this with her, and the trust that they have in her ability to be able to present this and to share it and to make it understandable to each one of us. I'm just like really in awe of that. I'm in awe of the teaching itself, because I I have a lot to learn myself. So I know if I went, I would learn a lot. Anyway, so I'm grateful that that it's gonna get. You guys are gonna go to Teotihuacán, which is a beautiful,
Yeah, yeah.
beautiful, wonderful place.
Well, the teachers are always the greatest learners, if you
Mm.
think about it. And you embody that, Ramona, very, very exquisitely. So any final word, HeatherAsh?
Yes. One, Ramona, I think you're going to be there in some form or fashion, so we'll talk. I have a feeling. um, and it's just such a deep joy for me to share Teotihuacan through my teachers, through the lineage. And there's really nothing like this place. And that, just to emphasize again, that this will be a very experiential journey, a very multifaceted journey, and that what will emerge on the other side of that is the depth of insight, of clarity, of purpose, and the capacity to then take new actions in our lives. That is, for me, what I always come back to Teotihuacan. It is such a home base for me, is because there's always gifts and energy and insight that then allows me to do what I do in the world in a bigger way. That there's that energy force of Theo pulling people literally in and then sending them back out resourced. So if you feel any pull, like, let yourself really feel into it and let yourself be drawn, because Theo knows what you need, I believe. And that the more that we trust those invisible realms and those pulls in our life, the more that we become the healers and the teachers and the guides and the deep listeners that is so needed now.
Thank you, HeatherAsh. We're all looking forward to being under your tutelage in that sacred space. Given the depth to which you've plumbed that particular site, it's going to be quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary. Banafshe, you want to close us out with a benediction?
Would love to. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, HeatherAsh, Ramona, and Jim, for sharing such amazing wisdom with us. Everyone, as we move into the week and into experiencing the solar eclipse on the 14th, we are to some parts of the United States and Mexico and other parts of South America, Central America. We will be witnessing a ring of fire around the moon. And to feel how this ring of fire is the fire of love. We spoke about heavy lifting, and when it comes to love, it's not very heavy. What we are to lift doesn't feel heavy at all. It feels light, it feels joyous. So opening our hearts as we experience this ring of fire, and even if you don't see it, just to know that there is this fire of love that connects us. And as our world goes through turbulence, we as lovers hold this connection with one another and wrap the fire of love, the light of love around our troubled world. Blessings to you, and see you in November.
Thank you, Banafshe. Thank you, HeatherAsh. Thank you, Romana. This has been a beautiful session, everyone. Check the link for our pilgrimage between the 18th and the 23rd of June, 2024. We hope you will all join us and then come back again next month. We always meet on the second Sunday of each month at 10 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much. Bye for now. Blessings.